Here we have a 2007 Subaru WRX, and in this one I am going to do what I would call the ultimate Subaru build. So we're going to strip the car down to a bare shell, get all the components off, all the drivetrain out, and then we are working our way up to a complete STI swap on this. So we're going to get all the rear end out of the car, the front end out of the car, even the gas tank, and while we're at it, we're going to take that opportunity of the bare shell to preserve or protect the body itself underneath before putting any of the components back into the car. Once the bulk of the components are off of the car, most of them come in large pieces and then are individually broken down to nuts and bolts and every single individual piece. Getting the front end out there and now starting to tear it down. A lot of these pieces actually won't be reused in the build, in which we would be replacing them with the STI component. And there you can see some of the chassis decay we're going to have to deal with as well. Getting nice and thorough and taking everything off the car so we can completely assess it and protect it. There, now we have taken it down to bare metal with some epoxy over top, and we're going to finish this off with some nice stone guard to make it look somewhat more original and further protected as well. We got into doing the front pinch welds and the front of the rockers as well. This car didn't actually have any severe corrosion. It was just kind of stone chip rust, so not too bad. Except for here, we had rust on the rad support, so we cut it out and welded in some new metal there. And now we are getting into actually filling all the holes with rust proofing, and now we're able to assemble the front end again. And into our motor. So this is our original motor. We had to get a bunch of components off of it for the replacement motor. And right along into the STI transmission here, going at it with a wire wheel. And then we're going to finish this off with some engine enamel, and it looks fantastic. Now that we have a lot of our parts coming back from powder coating, we are able to reassemble them and back onto the transmission and into cleaning the bay in preparation for the motor and transmission going back in. So there we have the transmission in. We use some Group N motor mounts and transmission mounts. And now we're able to start to build off the transmission there, along with, while we're at it, putting some brand new brake lines in the rear and a nice gas tank refresh. And there is a lot more stuff back from powder coating. And again, we can begin to attach these pieces to the car while we're pushing in bushings at the same time. And there's part of the upgrade with the STI components. And a bunch more bushings and some nice new shiny parts. And again, the calipers all completely rebuilt and restored. And into assembling our rear spindles with new bearings, backing plates. And now onto the STI steering rack. Again, we've got some new lines and new bushings for that as well. And into the car we go, and onto some heat shields and a strut bar for the rear. Now we can begin to actually attach some of the arms and a little bit of TLC on the STI R180 there. Came out looking great. And onto the drive shafts. And into some fancy rotors. Now into actually assembling the brakes, really starting to set off the look of the car, and the STI bars done in the same color as well. Now the car is really starting to come together. Here we have a 07 STI rear bumper, so we're going to go ahead and do the matching arches for them as well. And a cool little window spoiler. These headlights later, I actually end up changing them, kind of fell out of love with them. And some really cool convex mirrors. These are super rad. Now we're getting into the rear sway bar here, looking good as well, and we can start to get our rear spindles on and our rear end together. Everything is sure looking nice and shiny. There we go with the calipers. Now it is really starting to look like a car again. I also ended up using stainless flex lines in place of the rubber ones there. Now we're going to get into the rest of the motor assembly. So we're putting the manifold together, cleaning up the harness, and we are ready to get it on the motor, and it is looking sweet. Throwing on the Exetti Stage 1 clutch there for the 6-speed, and now we are ready to put that back in the engine bay. So the motor is a built 257 with forged pistons. It actually has stock rods, new bearings, and it is using the Subaru factory twin scroll turbo and a Tomei header and up pipe. That is a 08 to 14 STI intercooler, so quite a bit larger than what was offered previously. And there is our twin scroll downpipe, now making room to add in a wideband sensor as well as the front O2 sensor, which actually picks up in the downpipe on a twin scroll. And now we are gearing up for the finale here. We are using a water meth system to help keep things cool and trying to install it nice and neat. And then we have the iWire DCCD kit, which was very straightforward. It was almost plug and play if I recall. And lastly, we are going to start to get some gauges in. So we have oil pressure, boost, and the wideband air fuel. So we are setting up our little base map there so that we're ready to fire up the car safely. Just going under the car one more time. Everything is looking really good. I'm really happy with how the underside of this car turned out. And there we go. We are mobile, but we still have a long way to go before we can really say this is done, because we have quite a bit of break-in driving to do before we can actually get in for our tune. Now, after many months of break-in driving, we are ready to fill up the water meth and gear up for our tune. So first we're going to do a smoke test, make sure we're not leaking anywhere, so we're all good. And we are all good and off to the tune. The car ended up doing 335 wheel horse and 400 torque. And now we are going to work on some of the body defects that I wasn't happy with, which originally was a bad paint job on the front bumper and the roof. And I'm also going to swap out the exhaust for something a little quieter. So I'm using a Fujitsu 3-inch exhaust. I did have to do some slight mods to make it actually reach the downpipe. So here we are welding away to meet our pipes. And then lastly, we're going to spray this with a high heat paint. This stuff works really well, keeps temperatures down, and it makes stuff look good if you want something other than stainless and rust. Now we are off with the bumper here and starting to disassemble it, which the Hawkeye front bumpers are quite a few pieces individually. And at the same time here, we're actually going to be replacing these thick plastic grills with the JDM fine mesh grills, which really change the look of the car. To me, it definitely is a big deal and something I really wanted for a long time. Then here, another thing I wanted to do for a while was ditch the C lights in place of some OEM lights again. Now we are preparing to prep the roof so we can repaint it as well. And we have also re-cleared and re-blacked the outside of the housing of the headlights. Here we are into some prep on the roof. And finally, we can put our exhaust back on, and it looks actually really, really nice. I really like the look of the tip out the back, and then the satin black exhaust pipes themselves as well. It is an incredibly quiet exhaust, almost inaudible. As you can see, I'm having a hard time trying to listen to it. And now we are into the booth for the final stretch and prep of the roof to be painted along with the bumper and pieces. So we got our sealer, now we got our base, and lastly we are into the shiny stuff, the clear coat there. So this turned out really good, and now I am very content with the paint on the car. All the rest of the car is original paint, actually. So now we can get back into our assembly with our roof trims. There we are with all the a million pieces that the Hawkeye front bumper entails. Our nice headlights back in. These turned out really, really sharp. And now some assembly on the front bumper. And we are not far off from making this a car again. Our little vents there. I actually had cut out the louvers on those at one point, so they look a little unusual, but it's a tuner thing. And now we have our cool fine mesh grills in, and there we go, onto the car and looking great. Nice little piece I made there. It's an original STI badge that I did in the World Rally Blue. And here we are with the finished product. So overall, this probably took about 300 labor hours. As far as money, I'm not sure. I haven't totaled it up yet because I don't totally want to become depressed. But the main part is I am happy with the car. It is an absolute joy to drive. And just like that, till the next one.